Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we have another great attacking game that was between Morphy and Johann Lowenthal, played during their famous match in London. In this game, you will once again see Morphy's incredible attacking talent. So without further ado, the game began with e4, e6, d4, d5, going into a French, e takes d5, and e takes d5. This is the exchange variation, which is notoriously known for being drawish and dull. However, Morphy did not have any intention of playing for a draw and preferred to attack in open positions, so that might explain why he went for this variation. Knight f3, knight f6, bishop d3, and bishop to e6. Very suspicious looking move, but not necessarily a mistake. Normally you would see the dark bishop come out first, with moves such as bishop to d6, and then later on, black will decide where he wants to place his light bishop. But instead, bishop to e6 was played. Castles, bishop to d6, knight c3, c6, and knight to e5. Morphy decides to place his knight on a central position and might have plans of rolling the f-pawn soon with f4 and f5. Another option is knight to g5, and is the move I would have probably played, which takes advantage of black's suspiciously placed bishop on e6. And now if you attempt to save the bishop with bishop to d7, the problem is rook to e1. And now black is in some serious trouble because after bishop to e7, queen to e2. And now black can no longer castle due to the bishop on e7 hanging afterward. So black's king is stuck in the center and white is winning in this position. So this was another good option, but knight to e5 was played instead, queen b6, and bishop to e3. Morphy offers his b-pawn in exchange for an increased lead in development. And in the game, black declined this offer by playing knight bd7. Instead, if black accepted this offer by playing queen takes b2, queen e1. This is the move that would have been played, which not only protects the knight on c3, but also x-rays the king. And now white also has ideas of rolling the f-pawn down. In this position, white is actually threatening to win material by the move rook to b1. Because after queen a3, bishop c1, queen to a5 is your only move, and knight to e4. Now, queen to c7 doesn't work due to rook takes b7 with a completely crushing position. If you try queen takes e1, the problem is knight takes d6 is an intermediate move, and after king f8 you just take the queen next move. So on queen e1, queen to b6 is your best move, retreating the queen, but after rook to b1, queen c7, and f4, white has full compensation for the pawn. So like I said before, black declines the offer by playing knight bd7, f4, and now a great move by black, bishop takes e5. This move does two things. The most important one being it prevents white's threat of f5. And the second thing it does is exchange off white's attackers and makes his attack weaker. After f takes e5, black plays the move knight to g4. Instead, if you're wondering why knight takes e5 doesn't work, it's because of knight to a4, and now black is losing material. So instead, knight to g4 is played, threatening white's dark bishop, and now queen to d2. If white attempts to save the bishop with bishop to d2, obviously this doesn't work due to queen takes d4. So queen to d2 was played, and now after knight takes e3, queen takes e3. Now, black decides to take the pawn on b2. This is a good moment to take the pawn because now two minor pieces have been exchanged off. White has less of an attack than before. So this was a good continuation for black. Now knight to e2. And now white is threatening to play the move rook a b1, which will gain white a big advantage because after queen to a3, the problem is rook takes b7, and now white has a very strong rook and is winning because of that. Instead of queen a3, if you get greedy and take the a2 pawn, the problem is rook to a1, and you get your queen trapped after queen b2 and rook fb1. So black played the move queen to a3 to prevent all of that, knight to f4. So now white relocates his knight and puts more pressure onto the e6 bishop, and white is actually threatening to win material once again due to knight takes e6, and bishop to g6, which will win the queen. So black prevents this by playing queen to e7, rook a b1, and now queenside castle. This looks like a risky way to protect the pawn because the king is castling into white's attack with the open b file. However, all the other options were bad. If b6, the problem is knight to h5, and after g6, there's knight g7 check, king d8, knight takes e6, f takes e6, and c4, with a clear advantage for white. Knight to b6 is even worse because of the same thing. Knight to h5, g6, but instead you play knight to f6. This takes advantage of the fact that the knight is no longer on d7, king to d8. Obviously, king f8 results in checkmate due to queen h6, so king d8 is forced, but then after rook b3, white has a completely dominating position. So those two moves weren't good, leaving queenside castling as the best option. And now bishop to e2. Great move by Morphy, clearing the way of the third rank for the queen, so now the queen can swing over to b3 and put more pressure onto b7. Knight b6, queen b3. Now x-raying the b7 pawn, rook to d7, knight d3. Great move by Morphy again, intending to relocate the knight to c5, knight c4, knight c5, and rook to c7. This move loses the game for black. Instead, the best defense is knight to d2, and after queen to a4, king b8 is the saving move for black, and black is doing fine here. Instead, if you get greedy and take the exchange, the problem is queen takes a7, and now white is threatening mate in 3 with queen a8, queen takes b7, and queen b8. So instead, on queen takes a7, you have to play something like queen g5, which creates a flight square, but after rook takes b1, white has a definite advantage. So that's why going after the exchange is bad, and king b8 is black's holding move. But instead, rook to c7 was played, and like I said before, this is the losing move due to queen to a4. And now, all of black's responses will lose. After a6, this loses to rook b3, and the idea of rook fb1 is unstoppable, and this will win the game for white. If you try the move king b8, which was black's saving move last variation, this doesn't work due to knight to a6 now, because the rook on c7 is hanging. In the game, black played the move b6, but if he chose b5, this is also losing due to queen a6, king d8, bishop takes c4, d takes c4, and a4. With the b file opening up, this is just undefendable for black. So b6 was played. After bishop takes c4 and b takes c5, if you try d takes c4, this loses to rook takes b6. And after a takes b6, there's queen a8 checkmate, b takes c5, bishop a6, king d7, bishop to b7, rook to d8, and bishop takes c6. Black resigned because after rook takes c6, there's rook to b7, king e8, rook takes c7, king takes c7, and queen takes c6, with a completely winning position for white. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.